Hey guys, how are we doing? Welcome to Walking Boxing. It is Tuesday, December the 10th, 2024, and only 2 weeks till Christmas. How good is it? I always sort of count New Year's, Christmas Eve as really the start of Christmas. I know it's obviously Christmas Day, but for me, Christmas Eve is when the magic starts. Actually, Christmas week, really, isn't it? I mean, the last few days, I mean, the excitement builds, and even at my age, I still love Christmas every year. And you know, it's not really for me about the presents anymore. I think if you're about my age, sort of late 40s, early 50s, you'll probably agree. It's not really about presents anymore. You really start to value your family and friends, and that's what I look forward to the most, really spending that real close-knit sort of few days or whatever it might be with the family. Always watch the Christmas movies together and get the popcorn out and hot chocolate, all that sort of stuff. So I love it, and I'll always be a big kid at heart, I think, but for me, Christmas is the best time of the year. So on to some boxing stuff. So thanks to everyone that tuned in last night, or the first episode back from since I've been away. I think it's been about 3 weeks. It was really good. We had good numbers and a lot of discussion. It was good. It was a really quick fire 2 hours. It went really quick. We could have probably kept going for another hour. That's how sort of quickly it went. It was just a lot of discussion, a lot of questions, a lot of comments. Good, and I was going to say good and bad. I mean, there's no such thing as a bad comment, but there were a few little jibes in there. I'm assuming they're from fans, maybe not from Australia, who like to have a bit of a dig. There was one, what was his name? Dry Turkey. Love the name. Who just put a little dig in there to say Aussies hype jobs. And look, it does pose the question, I suppose. You know, his main point was that, you know, the Aussies will have a big win and then pretty much can't back it up in the next fight and lose the title or whatever it might be. And look, it does have some merit, I suppose, but when you think about it, and I did say this last night, I mean, it's not just Aussies. I mean, most champions don't have a lot of defences these days, no matter what country you're from. It's such a hard business these days that, and the boxing programs in most developed countries these days are pretty good, and there's a pretty good spread of champions across the board, across all continents. So yeah, I don't really buy the fact that Aussies are hype jobs, but what it does sort of get me thinking about is this year with Australian boxing, has it been a good year or a bad year? And my obvious sort of thought, or the first point that sort of pops in my head is, of course it's been a good year. We're about to have our 19th and 20th fights featuring Australian boxers. But then you look at the flip side of the year that we've had, and I'll go through them, but there's been some monumental losses in there as well. So it's a difficult one. Let's go back, I suppose, to the start of the year, and we're not saying that we're about to have our 20th world title fight. The ones we're talking about is Friday night with Desi Robinson and Kay Scott. They'll fight for the IBF middleweight female belt, and then Sam Goodman on Christmas Eve. We're going to crack at the undisputed 122-pound title. So there's been another 18 fights apart from that. So on the surface, you would say, wow, what a year this has been. This is probably my reaction. But when a couple of comments come up last night about, you know, this hype job thing, which again I don't buy into, got me thinking, well, geez, we've had some good wins, but we've also had some pretty bad losses. So has it been a good year or a bad year? So let's go back to the start of the year, and this is in no particular order. I'll do my best to keep them chronologically in order, but it could be all over the place. I might even miss one or two, but we'll see how we go. I've done this totally off script, by the way. I don't like to have a script. Sometimes I'll have points that I might write down if there's a lot to go through, but I like to sort of do it ad lib. So I'm assuming that's the way you guys like it. No, not reading off a script or anything like that. Just ad hocking it and just going for it. So we go back to the start of the year, and I'm probably thinking it was around the time, was it the Las Vegas fight with Tim Tszyu? I think, actually no, I'll go back a little bit further. We had Jason Maloney. Now Jason actually defended his title at the start of the year, and the guy he fought escapes me. I'm not really fussed about the opponents, or most of the opponents, just the result. So Jason had a good win to start the year. That was in Canada. So we got off to a really good start to the year, and unlike a lot of champions in recent memory, he got the first defence. He'd won that belt against Astrolabio last year. I was fortunate to be there, and it was a great win by Jason, and backed it up with that win in Canada. So that was a tick to start the year. Then it started to go a little bit pear-shaped for us Aussies, because we went to Phoenix, Arizona for starters, and we had Liam Wilson, who fought Oscar Valdez and was stopped, what was it, the 6th round or something? I can't remember. It was a stoppage loss, a really disappointing loss. I don't think there was any or negativity about the loss, if I'm being honest. I mean, to go to Phoenix, Arizona, which is, you may as well say, Valdez's hometown, because I was there and it was 99% Valdez. It was a very intimidating atmosphere for Liam Wilson, so I think he actually did well to go into the cauldron and do as well as he did. So there was a loss. It was going to be the first of 3 losses for the weekend, and one of them was a massive one. And then we go to Las Vegas, and we had Michael Zarafa getting absolutely poleaxed by Erislandy Lara in the second round. Not even competitive, was just bombed out of there in the second round. And yeah, you had to feel for Michael on the night, because he was just never in the fight. He looked very tentative and just got blown away. It was as simple as that. And then, of course, in the main event that night, probably one of the hardest losses to take. Well, there's probably more later in the year to come, but then we had the Fundora loss, which was look, it was really disappointing. But I think we all walked away after that fight thinking, well, the loss is going to have an asterisk beside it. Of course, it was a shame that he lost, and but the circumstances, I think, we were all forgiving of Tim, and I think the boxing world was, outside of Australia as well. The fact that he couldn't see and had the blood all over his face for 8 rounds, no, it was 10 rounds. I think more so the Aussies were more, and not so just the Aussies, but general fight fans in, just as I said, just in general, were very critical of his corner and everything else. Look, I'll just say again, the fight should have been stopped after the 2nd, if not 3rd round. But anyway, so that was a really hard one to swallow. But again, I think it had an asterisk because of the circumstances. And I don't think Tim lost too many fans or admirers, or lost too much respect because of that loss. Disappointing, he lost his belt and an opportunity at the WBC belt as well, but again, I thought we sort of took that on the chin, excuse the pun. So then we get into a little bit later, I'm just sort of go through in no particular order. We had George Kambosos getting beaten by, or getting stopped by, Vasily Lomachenko. I'd like to say George was competitive and it was a good fight, but if I'm being honest, one, I applaud George for taking the fight and targeting Lomachenko to take on. He could have maybe gone a bit of an easier route or something, I don't know, but he wanted Loma. He always wanted Loma. He wanted him after he won the belts in the first place. And then we had Andrew Maloney on the undercard. He lost as well, but that was I think a controversial loss. I thought Andrew won that fight. So again, it's disappointing, but do you put it in the basket with an asterisk? I don't know. We had Jason losing in Japan, lost his WBO belt. I'm just sort of running through these here, guys. Forgive me if I've missed a few. We had Liam Paro beat Subriel Matias in a fantastic win, probably one of the best wins an Aussie has had in a world title fight. But again, later in the year, last weekend, of course, he lost the belt in really disappointing fashion. We had Shay Keneally win the WBA light heavyweight female title. We had Sky Nicholson win the WBC featherweight title and defend it twice. Who else have we got in there? I'm just trying to think. Of course, then, later in the year, we had Tim Tszyu with probably the most disappointing loss of the year, when he was, I said it about Michael Zarafa. I've got to say it about Tim Tszyu. He was absolutely blown away and obliterated by Murtazaliev. Probably, and I think the loss that Tim had to Murtazaliev really was probably worse than Michael's loss to Erislandy Lara. Erislandy Lara, he dropped Michael and it was pretty much all over, but with Tim, it's still hard to sort of get my head around. He was absolutely pulverised in 3 rounds, which is something we just never thought we'd see. But I think it was a bit of bit of a reality check for us Aussies, but especially for Tim and his team, of course, because he was the one on the end of it. So I think who else was there? Am I forgetting someone? I probably am. Again, this is probably why I probably should take notes. But overall, you can see where I'm going with it all. Well, we had Shanika Johnson defend her or win the IBF, I think it was, or is it WBA, whatever it was. She won against Nina Hughes on the undercard of Kambosos and Lomachenko as well. So, yeah, look, it's an interesting. Oh, sorry, geez, I almost put myself up to some very, very spiteful comments coming my way, and I can't believe I almost forgot about him. The number one fighter in Australia, Jaya Pataya. Lyndon, give yourself a slap. I would if I didn't have a handful here. I've got a camera in one hand and a leash in the other. Oh, Lyndon, that's a monumental slip up, that is. The main man, Jaya Pataya. Two fights this year. Jeez, can't believe I forgot Jaya Pataya. So, and he's probably been the cherry on top for us this year, as far as, or the shining light, probably along with the female in the female section with Skye Nicholson. So, as I said, you've got to look at all that. Is it a pass or a fail for the Aussies in 2024? And you've probably got to look at, maybe it comes down to the Sam Goodman fight with Naoya Inoue. Now, the fight goes the way I think, unfortunately, we all think it's going to go. Maybe it's not going to end on a good note for Australian boxing. Now, my personal opinion is, I think it's definitely been a mixed year. The highs and lows. The highs of Jaya Pataya, the highs of Liam Paro, the highs of Skye Nicholson. You've got to give her credit. She had 3 world title fights this year and won them all. And then the lows. Liam Wilson getting beaten, and Tim Tszyu. I was really disappointed, though, I will say, with Andrew Maloney's loss. I really felt for Andrew. No excuses for Jason's fight or George Kambosos' fight, none of those type of fights, but I really felt for Andrew Maloney. I really thought he won that fight. So yeah, it's been a mixed year, but if I'm going to have to choose one side or the other, regardless of what happens with Sam Goodman, I think it's been a great year to have 20 title fights featuring Australian boxers. I mean, wow. We talked about it last night, and I think I might have even talked about it in the last couple of days in these episodes as well. You know, if you're my age and you go back to the 80s and 90s and that sort of stuff, the amount of Aussies fighting in world title fights were next to zero. We had maybe 1 or 2 fighters fighting in world title fights that year. And now we've got, well, didn't sort of take count of it, but 20 fights featuring Aussie fighters is just something that I don't think we've ever had before, and might not even have again. Just this year, it seemed like every month an Aussie was in a world title fight. So I, for one, think we've had a great year. Now, as we develop and progress and maybe get more opportunities, more exposure to, this way buddy, more exposure to the world stage and big fights and getting good promoters behind our guys and girls, the 20 fights might turn into 25 and then into 30. And yes, okay, regardless of the fact that, maybe some of the guys and girls haven't been able to hold on to the world titles, it's no different to any other champion in the world, if you're asking me. And again, I went over this last night. Don't just look at the Aussies. A lot of fighters from the US, Mexico, the UK, whoever it might be, Asia, a lot of them lose their titles in the first couple of fights. It's just the state of the sport at the moment. It's so hard. I mean, let's face it, you win the title, sometimes you've got to fight the mandatory straight up, and he's a mandatory for a reason, because he's a very, very good fighter. Even a voluntary sometimes can jump up and surprise you. It's just the sport that we're in. So I certainly don't buy into this, well, definitely don't buy into the hype job sort of bullshit, because how can you be a hype job when you've just won a world title regardless of the circumstances afterwards? So that's just my opinion anyway. I think boxing in Australia has never been at a more all-time high. And I think it's been a great year. Yes, again, it's been a mixed year. There's been some highs and definitely some major lows. But I think across the board, I think what happens is we get a little bit caught up on sometimes, especially this year with the Tim Tszyu factor. I think that loss really ripped the heart out of a lot of Aussie boxing fans. But I think fans that are into Australian boxing in general, not just 1 or 2 fighters that they might follow casually, I think they understand you know, the state of play. And I think definitely if you spoke to a lot of people that have been in the industry, whether it be a trainer, manager, promoter, whatever it might be, that they would say that they've probably never seen a year like this year. So again, regardless of what happens with Sam Goodman, this has been a year for the ages. It really has. And you know, then of course we've got Jai early in 2025, so he might get us off to another belter. We'll see how we go. But overall, guys, I think it's definitely a pass. And I just don't think we read too much into some of the disappointing losses we've had, because these guys are fighting the best. And I just think sometimes people's opinions or the vision or whatever it might be gets a little clouded by just looking, oh well, he lost. Well, look at who he lost to, you know, and especially, well, probably the first example on the weekend is Liam Para. I mean, you know, a lot of people that really sort of dug the boots into Liam, saying couldn't back it up after the Matthias fight. Well, geez, the Matthias fight by itself was a massive win. He was just beaten by a better fighter on the weekend, and he'll learn from it. He's still relatively inexperienced. And this is the other thing that sometimes people forget. You know, and probably someone like Jeff Horn was the same. Even George Kambosos was the same. Is that the quality of opposition maybe leading up to the world title fight mightn't be up here, but they win the title, but then they're exposed to that level again, and maybe even again straight after that. And it's really hard to back up when you haven't been there during your whole career. And that's why the really great fighters, the Pacquiaos and De La Hoyas and Canelos and all those type of guys, as good as they are, because they've been exposed to that level opponent in multiple fights over multiple years. And I think as that happens with the Aussies, guys and girls, that you'll see the Aussies not only winning more of these big fights, but winning more often and keeping hold of belts for multiple defences, rather than just, you know, winning it and maybe losing it in the next fight. So I hope I made a little bit of sense with that, guys. I'm probably gibbering on a little bit, but I for one just think, regardless of what a lot of people think out there as far as the year that we've had, I just think it's been a sensational year, and I just think it's one we can build on. And over the next few years, you know, as I said, those 20 fights might turn into 25 and then 30, and we're winning, you know, our fair share of those fights and heading on to those belts for quite some time, and having you know, big fights consistently. So anyway, give me your thoughts, guys. Happy to hear it. I'm sure you'll let me know. But have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.